Welcome into This is Baseball. I am Brandon Johnson. We are into September. September is here. Football is here this week, which means that the Major League Baseball postseason is right around the corner. It's a really good time of year for sports. We have division races that are heating up. We have wild card races that are really close. And we have just about 25 games left on the regular season schedule before we turn over to the playoffs. I've been talking about this AL West playoff race, division race for a while now, but it's gotten extremely interesting because Seattle has been hot since the All-Star break. I remember we were talking about Texas and Houston going head-to-head down the stretch. Well, Seattle has taken the lead. They're in first place in that division. They have a one-game lead on Texas and Houston. So this one is really going to go down to the last weekend of the season. And at this point, I've been kind of rooting for Texas. They're finally having a good season. I thought all along that Houston is going to win this division. But at this point, I think it'd be really fun to see Seattle come out as American League West champions. Just something different. And this would be 2 consecutive seasons for Seattle making the playoffs should they win the division. If they don't win the division, they are very likely one of the 3 wildcard teams. But that's a really tight race as well in the wild card. It's Tampa Bay, Texas, and Houston are those wild card teams. Toronto is a game and a half back. So it's just, there's no margin for error right now. So really tight race. Again, going to come down to the wire. It's going to be a lot of fun. Now, September is not going to be easy for Seattle. If you take a look at their schedule, they're playing a series against Cincinnati right now. And Cincinnati has been one of the surprise teams. So really tough battle for them. They've got 4 against Tampa Bay. And they've got 3 against the Angels, which they should take. And then they play the Dodgers. And they have 3 against Oakland. Then they finish off the season with Texas and Houston. They have about a 10-game stretch where it's Texas, Houston, and Texas. So it is going to be must watch out in the American League West because these teams are going to be going head to head, and it might literally come down to the last game on who wins this division. Now remember, we don't have game 163 anymore. There's going to be tiebreakers, run differential, head to head, all these different percentages and stats that they'll look at instead of doing a game 163. So American League West will be one to watch down the stretch. The AL West isn't the only division that is extremely tight right now. Moving out to the American League East, Baltimore is still holding steady, leading that division by 2.5 games over Tampa Bay. Now, if you remember at the beginning of the season, Tampa Bay opened the season with a 13-game winning streak, and you really thought that it was over right then and there. But Baltimore has played incredibly great baseball all season long, and still into September playing very solid baseball, and they're going to have to keep winning too. They've got Tampa Bay breathing down their neck. This is a division that I honestly thought that the Yankees were going to be on top of, and maybe this was the year that they kind of break through, but New York's under 500 right now. They're 17 and a half games back in their division, and they're likely going to be cleaning house at the end of this offseason, or at the end of this regular season. Now, Baltimore's schedule for the rest of the season's a little bit lighter than what Seattle's was. They're playing the Angels. They have Boston. St. Louis is on their schedule still, and they're having a terrible year. They have 4 against Tampa. Obviously, a division rival there that's going to be, trying to sweep. That's going to be the most important series left in the American League East, is that 4-game stretch coming up, not this weekend, but next weekend with Tampa and Baltimore. That's, in all honesty, that might be what determines this division. After that, Houston, Cleveland, Washington, and Boston for Baltimore. So they've got 4 games left against Tampa, and it's going to be very important that they take 3 out of 4 or honestly sweep them to keep things comfortable for them in their division. Over in the American League Central, Minnesota has a 5-game lead on Cleveland. This one, I think, is pretty much Minnesota's division to take. Cleveland's under 500. We've been saying all season long, it's an underwhelming division. In all honesty, Minnesota is a team that obviously they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to win their division, but probably won't make it out of the wild card round. They're just not a very strong team. Let's head over to the National League, the National League East. Atlanta Braves are having one of the greatest seasons ever. Have a 15-game lead in the National League East ahead of the Philadelphia Phillies, and they're not coughing that one up. They're on pace to win 107 games. A story for the National League East. When you went into this season, it was Mets, Braves, Phillies, and the Mets are already eliminated from playoff contention. They obviously, at the trade deadline, punted on the 2023 season and the 2024 season, maybe even in 25. Their thought was, let's do a quick rebuild, be ready for maybe 2025, definitely 2026. They're also kind of doing a shakeup in their front office. The Mets, obviously, they had Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander. They traded both of those players, Scherzer to the Rangers, Justin Verlander back to the Houston Astros, where he signed from. And I don't really know what went wrong with this team. I think it just didn't come together, because there have been reports that, the locker room wasn't an issue. In fact, it was a pretty cohesive group that they had. It just, it's just one of those things where on paper they look like they're a team that can win 100 games. And I said that in the beginning of the year, that the Mets have a team and they have an owner that's willing to spend the money and, basically guarantee a spot in October. Obviously, this is a situation where I missed on this team. But the Braves, again, doing exactly kind of what I thought they were going to do and be an absolute force in the division, and they are absolutely running away with it. 15 ahead of a very good Phillies team. The National League Central. The National League Central is very interesting. Another division that I kind of missed on. I didn't think that it was going to be very competitive. I had the St. Louis Cardinals as a lock to win the division, and they have not performed the way that they thought they would from the word go. They're really needing to find some starting pitching. That's been a lot of their issue this year. But at one point in this season, in May, the Pittsburgh Pirates were leading the NL Central. And Cincinnati's been up there at one point. They've kind of come back to earth. Chicago's 3.5 behind the Milwaukee Brewers. The season ended today. Chicago would be one of the wild card teams. They'd be the second wild card team. And going to be interesting. I think that Milwaukee will hold on. It's really going to come down to Cincinnati, and Chicago kind of duking it out there. There's a four-way tie for the fourth place spot, or for the third place wildcard team. Arizona, Diamondbacks, Marlins, Giants, and Reds. They're all right there and all kind of just playing okay baseball. So it's going to come down to whatever team is going to get hot there at the right time in the last couple weeks of the season. Now, like I said, looking at the Cubs, they are 3.5 games behind Milwaukee right now. They have one more chance to face them, and that is the last series of the season. And before they do that, they're going to play. They have a little bit of an interesting schedule. They have San Francisco, they just finished up in Cincinnati, who is chasing them for the division and the wild card spot. And then they're going to go and play San Francisco, another wild card team. Arizona, also in the wild card race. Go to Colorado, who is already eliminated. Then they'll see Arizona again. And then kind of skip to the last week of the season. Atlanta, going to be a tough series to win. And then they'll finally close the series against Milwaukee on the road. And that could potentially have huge playoff implications for whether or not you're going to win the division or be a wild card team. But the National League Central has been overall a surprisingly fun division to pay attention to this season. And it's, again, like a few other divisions in this league, is going to come down to the wire. And that's exactly what you want for the league. Now, let's finish this out in the National League West. Los Angeles Dodgers now are 14.5 games up on both the Diamondbacks and the Giants. There was a point in the season where the Dodgers were in third place behind both of those teams that I just mentioned for about the first 2 months of the season. It was looking like Arizona could make a run at the division, but I've kind of always felt that the Dodgers were going to take care of the West. The team that is most surprising is the San Diego Padres, and the fact that they have completely underperformed. They're kind of in the same realm as the New York Mets, and everybody had high expectations for them. You know, the Mets had their massive payroll, $350 million, and they had won 100 games and made the playoffs in the previous season. They had bolstered their roster. And the Padres, they were in the NLCS just a year ago and, had goals to get to a World Series this season, and they're not even going to get a chance to compete for it, it looks like. Their only hope is the wild card, and they're 5.5 games out of the last spot. And like I said, there's 4 other teams ahead of them that are kind of jockeying for position to get that spot. So it is a complete long shot for the Padres to be in the postseason. I want to close the show and highlight a couple of players that really kind of standing out. Obviously, Ronald Acuna Jr. having an MVP caliber season. He will, in all likelihood, win it unless it's going to be him or Mookie Betts. But the other night, Ronald Acuna Jr. became the first player ever to hit 30 home runs and steal 60 bags in the same season. Ronald Acuna Jr. is a guy that came out and said, with this new rule, that he was going to steal 60 plus bags, and he's lived up to that. He's lived up to all of his expectations. He's hitting .335. His on base percentage is over 400. OPS just under 1,000. Just having a great season. Just under 7. His WAR is just under 7. And then you look at Mookie Betts, who has very similar stats, hitting .316, on base percentage of .410, OPS over 1,000. He has 38 home runs, 99 RBIs, a WAR of about 8, and the MVP race is going to come down to Mookie Betts or Ronald Acuna Jr. Again, probably going to sway towards Ronald Acuna Jr. It's been looking that way most of the season. Last player I want to highlight is for the Kansas City Royals. Obviously, that's the team that I follow closely. Royals are obviously not having a great season. They're going to lose 100-plus games. But Bobby Witt Jr. having a great season. 275 batting average, 315 on base, 500 slugging, 815 OPS. Now, I want to look at his home runs. So he's hit 28 home runs. He's stolen 39 bags. So he is 2 home runs away from being in the 30 club. He's just kind of blossoming into the player that everybody expected him to be. And I really hope that the Kansas City Royals organization takes him seriously and finds a way to keep him in a Royals uniform for the long haul, because he is a generational talent and he is going to be a great player for a team like the Royals to build their core around. That's all I have this week. If you want to get connected with us, follow us on Twitter at thisisbaseball_. Same name on Instagram. Follow us on Facebook. Like us on Facebook. This is Baseball. If you're interested in football, we have a football podcast. It's called the Football Kingdom Podcast. You can find that anywhere you listen to your podcast. We will have a new episode every Tuesday. We already have our latest one out. It is previewing week 1 of the NFL and some key matchups that we want to look at. Thank you for listening. See you next time.